The chrome surface of the smuggling compartment hissed open, revealing not jewels, not weapons, but a girl. She was curled into a ball, her skin the color of a dying nebula, a swirling canvas of violet and indigo. Chains forged from some energy-dampening alloy snaked around her wrists and ankles, but it was her eyes that seized him. They were twin supernovas of defiance, burning with a fury that could crack planets. Kalen had smuggled a lot of things in the rust bucket he called the Void Hopper. Illicit tech, wanted criminals, even a crate of genetically modified squeaking fungi once. But this was new. He was no hero. He was a pilot with a debt to a man who collected kneecaps for late payments. The job was simple. Get the cargo from the GSC transfer station on Xylos to the extraction point in the asteroid belt. The client, a shadowy figure on a flickering comms channel, had paid a sum that could not only clear his debt, but buy him a new life on a moon where no one knew his name. He hadn't asked what the cargo was. It was better that way. Cleaner. Now, staring at the girl who was clearly the last of a species the Galactic Security Corporation had spent a decade hunting to extinction, he knew this was the opposite of clean. This was messy enough to stain the entire sector. The girl, a Riala, a name spoken only in whispers and horror stories, slowly uncurled herself. The GSC propaganda painted them as genetic time bombs, beings whose very DNA held the secrets to reality-warping technology, a power too great for anyone to hold. They said the Riala could rewrite physics with a thought, unravel a man's mind with a whisper. This one just looked tired and angry. Very, very angry. They told me the escape transport would be discreet, she said, her voice a low melody that vibrated in Kalen's bones. They didn't mention it would smell like burnt oil and regret. Kalen leaned against the bulkhead, crossing his arms. The regret is an optional extra. You're lucky. Most clients have to pay for the full emotional baggage package. Her supernova eyes narrowed. You're the pilot? Kalen Vance. He flinched. No one had used his full name in years. It felt alien, a relic from a life he'd jettisoned in a hurry. Just Kalen, he grunted. And you are? You don't know? Rule 1 of my profession, don't know the cargo. Rule 2, refer to Rule 1. She offered a wry, tired smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Lyra, just a name. But the way she said it, it felt like a title. All right, Lyra, the plan is simple. We stay quiet, we drift through the asteroid field, and we meet your friends. You get off my ship, I get paid, and we never see each other again. An alarm blared through the cockpit, a piercing shriek that shattered the fragile understanding between them. Red lights flashed, painting the bridge in strokes of blood and panic. What was that? Lyra asked, her calm facade cracking. Kalen was already at the controls, his hands dancing across the console with a practiced speed that betrayed his lazy posture. That, he said grimly, is the sound of the plan going to hell. On the main viewer, a ship materialized from the void, tearing a hole in space-time. It wasn't a standard patrol vessel. It was a GSC Nomad-class pursuit hunter, a shark made of gunmetal and malice, designed for one purpose: to hunt, to capture, and to kill. They found us, Lyra whispered, the fury in her eyes being replaced by a flicker of something he hadn't expected. Fear. How? This route was supposed to be clean. Looks like your friends have a leak, Kalen snapped, yanking the controls hard to port. The Void Hopper groaned in protest as it swerved behind a massive, pockmarked asteroid. Or your client set me up. The comms system crackled to life, a voice slicing through the static, cold and sharp as cryo shards. Vessel, identify yourself. You are harboring a fugitive of the Galactic Security Corporation. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will be met with overwhelming force. Overwhelming force, Kalen muttered. They never just say they're going to shoot you. He looked at Lyra. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They're not taking me back, she said, her voice dropping to a near-silent whisper. I won't let them. Kalen's mind raced. He could surrender. Give her up. He'd probably get a prison sentence, but he might live. His debt would be the least of his worries. But then he remembered the look in her eyes when he'd first opened that compartment. Defiance. The same defiance he'd felt when he'd turned his back on his family, on his name, on the destiny they had forged for him in fire and honor. He hated that feeling. It only ever led to trouble. "Strap in," he said, his voice a low growl. "Define strap in," she replied, gripping the back of the co-pilot's chair. "Are we running?" "Running is for people with faster ships," Kalen said, a feral grin spreading across his face. "We're going to be a little more creative." His fingers flew across a secondary console, one he hadn't touched in years. It was a custom installation, a ghost from his past. He rerouted primary power from the life support systems. The air thinned and the emergency lights flickered. "What are you doing?" Lyra gasped, her knuckles white. "Playing a game I haven't played in a long time," he replied, his eyes glued to the tactical display. The GSC Hunter was closing in, its weapon ports glowing with malevolent energy. "I call it the Vance Gambit." He waited. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to jump to hyperspace, to do anything but sit here and wait for annihilation. The GSC ship fired a volley of plasma cannons. The space where they had been a moment ago erupted in a silent, fiery blossom. Kalen didn't flinch. He pushed the Void Hopper forward, not away from the Hunter, but directly toward the largest asteroid in the cluster, a behemoth of rock and ice the size of a small moon. "Are you insane?" Lyra yelled over the groaning of the ship's hull. "Their targeting system is locking on." "I know," Kalen said calmly. He watched the trajectory of the incoming torpedoes on his display. Closer. Closer. "I'm counting on it." At the very last second, when the torpedoes were almost upon them, he slammed a button. The Void Hopper's magnetic cargo clamps, usually used for hauling freight containers, fired at full power, latching on to the metallic core of a smaller, denser asteroid just above them. The ship didn't turn. It pivoted. With a gut-wrenching lurch, the Void Hopper swung around the smaller asteroid like a stone in a sling, using the rock as a shield. The GSC torpedoes, unable to recalibrate in time, slammed into the moon-sized asteroid they were heading towards. The impact was catastrophic. A chain reaction ripped through the giant rock, its unstable core detonating in a silent, spectacular explosion. The GSC Hunter, positioned perfectly on the other side to intercept them, was caught completely in the blast wave. Its shields flared, then died. Its hull buckled, torn apart by 1 billion tons of vaporized rock and ice. The warship was tossed aside like a child's toy, its systems fried, its structure compromised. It wasn't destroyed, but it was crippled, dead in the water. Silence descended on the cockpit of the Void Hopper, broken only by the sound of their own ragged breathing. Kalen slowly rerouted power back to life support, the hum of the ship returning to normal. He leaned back in his chair, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. Lyra stared at the display, at the ruined GSC Hunter tumbling helplessly in space. She turned to look at him, her supernova eyes wide with a mixture of shock, awe, and suspicion. The Vance Gambit?" she stammered. "My grandfather called it reckless endangerment of galactic property," Kalen said with a shrug, his nonchalant attitude returning. He was a bit of a traditionalist. Before she could question him further, a new alert chimed. This one, a priority, one diplomatic channel. The main screen flickered, replacing the view of the disabled Hunter with the face of a regal, severe-looking woman in the formal robes of the Galactic High Council. "Unidentified vessel," the woman intoned, her voice echoing with authority. "We have just witnessed your encounter. The GSC vessel you have disabled was operating in direct violation of Council sanctions. Its commander is wanted for war crimes. You have in essence just done the entire galaxy a tremendous favor. Identify yourself." Kalen's blood ran cold. This was worse, so much worse than being caught by the GSC. He opened his mouth to give a fake name, a standard smuggler's alias, but Lyra spoke first. She stepped forward, her voice clear and strong, resonating with an ancient authority. "This is the personal transport of Lord Kalen of House Vance," she declared, her eyes locked on his. "He requires immediate and unrestricted passage to the council chambers. The matter is of utmost urgency to the security of the galaxy." The councilwoman's eyes widened. The name Vance was not one spoken lightly. It was a name steeped in legend, a name that had shaped the course of history for centuries. "House Vance?" she whispered, her composure momentarily shattered. We were not aware he was active in this sector." "Of course, my lord. Your clearance is granted. We await your arrival." The transmission ended. Kalen slowly turned to face Lyra, his expression a thunderous mask of disbelief and fury. "What in the seven hells was that?" he demanded. Lyra met his gaze without flinching, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "That," she said, "was me returning the favor. You played a gambit to save us. I just raised the stakes." The journey to the galactic capital was a tense, silent affair. Kalen piloted the ship with a grim efficiency, his mind a maelstrom of recriminations. He had spent 15 years building a wall around his past, brick by painful brick. He'd changed his name, his appearance, his entire way of life, all to escape the crushing weight of his family's legacy. And in a single moment, a woman he'd known for less than an hour had torn that wall down with a handful of words. Lyra watched him from the co-pilot's seat, her expression unreadable. "You're angry," she stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "I'm beyond angry," he bit back, not taking his eyes off the swirling vortex of hyperspace. "I'm compromised. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've ensured our survival," she countered calmly. "As a smuggler, you would have been detained and questioned. Your ship would have been impounded. They would have found me. But as Lord Kalen Vance, hero of the people, you are untouchable. There is no Lord Kalen Vance," he exploded, finally turning to face her. "He doesn't exist. I killed him 15 years ago. Did you?" she asked softly, her gaze piercing. The man who just outmaneuvered a GSC hunter with a move they'll be studying at the academy for the next century didn't seem dead to me. He seemed dormant. Kalen slumped back in his chair, the fight going out of him. She was right. For those few minutes, he hadn't been Kalen the smuggler. He had been himself, the self he loathed, the self he feared. "My family," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "They're not just a family, they're an institution. A force of nature. To be a Vance is to have your life laid out for you from birth. Wars to fight, treaties to negotiate, a galaxy to manage. I didn't want it. I just wanted to be normal." "There's nothing normal about you, Kalen," Lyra said, her voice gentle. "Just as there is nothing normal about me. We are what we are. Hiding from it doesn't change our nature." As if summoned by his very words, a new ship appeared on their proximity sensors, exiting hyperspace with a grace and precision that spoke of military-grade technology far beyond anything the GSC possessed. It was a sleek obsidian vessel bearing an insignia Kalen hadn't seen since the day he'd run away. The silver wolf's head of House Vance. "Oh no," he groaned, his face paling. "Not them. Anyone but them." The comms channel opened without their permission, a feature of Vance family vessels he'd always found infuriating. A voice boomed through the cockpit, a voice that could command fleets and make stars tremble. "Kalen Atticus Vance, what in the blazes have you gotten yourself into this time, boy? And why does it say on the galactic news feed that you've single-handedly declared war on a rogue GSC faction?" Framed on the view screen was a man who looked like he was carved from ancient granite. Admiral Theron Vance, his grandfather. His uniform was impeccable, adorned with medals from conflicts Kalen had only read about in history books. Beside him, a young woman with fiery red hair and mischievous eyes that were a mirror of Kalen's own waved enthusiastically. "Big brother," she chirped. "I told Grandpa I sensed a disturbance in the boring force. It's usually a sign you're having fun without me." Lyra stared at the screen, her eyes wide. "That's Admiral Theron Vance," she breathed, her voice filled with reverence. "The Wolf of Andromeda, and that must be your sister." "Elara," Kalen confirmed miserably. "Head of the Vance family's intelligence network and the single most annoying person in the known universe." He sighed, resigned to his fate. "You wanted to meet the family," he muttered to Lyra. "Congratulations. The circus is in town." The airlock of the Void Hopper hissed open to admit a legend and a whirlwind. Admiral Vance had to duck to get through the doorway, his presence immediately making the small ship feel like a shoebox. Ilara, on the other hand, practically danced in, her eyes taking in every detail of the ship with a sharp, analytical gaze that missed nothing. "Wow," she said, running a finger over a scorch mark on the wall. "This place is a dump. I love it. It has so much—" Pathetic character. The Admiral ignored her, his piercing gaze falling on Lyra. He assessed her in a single, sweeping glance, taking in her strange beauty, the faint glow of the energy cuffs still on her wrists, and the defiant tilt of her chin. "A Rayala," he stated, his voice a low rumble. "Haven't seen one of your kind since the Cygnus campaign. You have your mother's fire." He wasn't speaking to Lyra, Kaelin realized. He was speaking about her. Lyra bowed her head respectfully. "Admiral Vance, my parents spoke of you. They said you were a man of honor." "Honor doesn't win wars, girl," the Admiral grunted, though a flicker of something that might have been pride showed in his eyes. He then turned his full attention to Kaelin, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. 15 years, Kaelin. 15 years of radio silence. We thought you were dead, or worse, that you'd become an accountant. "I was busy," Kaelin muttered, refusing to meet his grandfather's eyes. "Busy hauling garbage from one end of the galaxy to the other while the name of Vance was being dragged through the mud by politicians and corporate lapdogs." The Admiral roared. "You have a duty." "I have no duty except to myself." Kaelin shot back, his own anger flaring. "I gave up my name, my title, everything to be free of that." Ilara, who had been amusing herself by trying to hack Kaelin's navigation computer, and succeeding with alarming speed, spun around in the pilot's chair. "Oh, this is my favorite part," she exclaimed, munching on a ration bar she'd produced from a pocket. "The part where they argue about honor and duty. It's so wonderfully dramatic." She hopped off the chair and sauntered over to Lyra, circling her like a curious cat. "So you're the one who broke him? I like you. You've got that whole endangered species chic thing going on. Very in this season." She tapped one of the energy cuffs on Lyra's wrist. "GSC tech, nasty stuff. Suppresses genetic expression." With a few deft movements, she manipulated a small device that had appeared in her hand. There was a click and the cuff fell open. She repeated the process on the others. The moment she was free, an almost imperceptible wave of energy washed through the ship. The lights flickered and a low hum resonated in the air. Lyra stretched her hands, her luminous skin seeming to glow brighter. "Thank you," she said to Ilara, her voice filled with gratitude. "Don't thank me yet," Ilara replied with a grin. "Grandpa will probably find a reason to put you in a different set of chains. Metaphorical ones, of course. We're very big on metaphorical bondage in our family." "Enough, Ilara," the Admiral commanded. He turned back to Kaelin, his expression serious. "This Vance gambit of yours. It's all over the public channels. The High Council is hailing you as a hero. The GSC is in disarray. You've kicked the hornet's nest, boy, and now they're all coming for you." "Let them come," Kaelin said, his voice quiet but firm. "Then what? You take them all on in this rust bucket? You think one clever trick is enough?" The Admiral gestured around the cockpit. "This isn't you, Kaelin. This is a costume, a role you've been playing. The real you, the one who could calculate hyperspace jumps in his head at age 10, the one who disarmed a Cathar death squad with a ceremonial fork at his own coming-of-age ceremony. That's the man the galaxy needs right now." Lyra's eyes widened. "You did what with a fork?" Kaelin shot his grandfather a venomous glare. "It was a spork, and you know it. And that was supposed to be a secret." "Secrets are for cowards," the Admiral declared. "The GSC didn't just stumble upon you. They were tipped off. They knew a Rayala was being moved. They set a trap. And you didn't just spring it, you turned it back on them. But this is just the beginning. The director of the GSC, a man named Valerius, he won't let this go. He's been consolidating power for years, operating in the shadows. He was behind the Rayala genocide. He wants your technology, Lyra. The ability to manipulate reality. And now he'll want Kaelin dead for interfering." The pieces clicked into place in Kaelin's mind. The suspiciously high payment. The clean route that led straight into an ambush. He hadn't just been a pilot. He'd been the bait. "So what's the plan?" he asked, the word "we" tasting strange on his tongue. The Admiral's lips curled into a predatory smile. "The plan? The plan is to remind the galaxy why you don't hunt a wolf unless you're prepared to deal with the whole pack. We're going to the High Council. You're going to accept their accolades. And then, we're going to do what our family does best. Ilara clapped her hands together with glee. We're going to overthrow a corrupt galactic institution. It's been ages since we had a good coup. The arrival at the Citadel, the sprawling space station that housed the Galactic Council, was met with a level of pomp and circumstance that made Kaylin's skin crawl. An honor guard of ceremonial droids lined the docking bay. Dignitaries and ambassadors jostled for a position to catch a glimpse of the hero of Xylos, the long-lost scion of House Vance. Kaylin endured it with a stoic silence. His grandfather at one side, Lyra at the other. He felt like an imposter, a fraud wearing a costume of heroism that didn't fit. But as he walked, he felt Lyra's hand brush against his, a small, grounding touch that reminded him why he was there. This wasn't about him. It was about her, about justice for her people. In a private chamber before the council session, they met with the councilwoman who had contacted them, a woman named Tressa. She was clearly flustered by the presence of the legendary Admiral Vance, but addressed Kaylin with a deep reverence. Lord Vance, she began, your actions have sent a shockwave through the GSC. Director Valerius has been unreachable. Several of his top commanders are in custody. You have given us the political capital we need to launch a full investigation. Investigation isn't enough, the Admiral rumbled. Valerius needs to be brought to justice. That will be difficult, Tressa admitted. He has powerful allies. He has dirt on half the council. To move against him directly would be messy. We like messy, Ilara piped up from the corner, where she was casually slicing a piece of fruit with a wickedly sharp-looking dagger. Kaylin ignored her. Director Valerius won't hide, he said, his voice calm and certain. He'll double down. He'll see this as an attack and he'll retaliate. As if on cue, a security alert chimed. Tressa's aide rushed in, his face pale. Ma'am, he stammered, Director Valerius has just arrived. He's demanding to address the council. He says he has evidence. Evidence that Lord Vance is not a hero, but a terrorist who colluded with the Reala fugitive to destroy a GSC vessel. A hush fell over the room. The gall of that man, the Admiral whispered, his hand clenching into a fist. Lyra looked at Kaylin, her eyes filled with worry. He's going to twist it, isn't he? He'll paint you as the villain. Of course he will, Kaylin replied, a strange sense of calm settling over him. This he understood. The political maneuvering, the lies, the half-truths, this was the world he had run from, but it was also the world in which he had been raised. Let him have the stage, Kaylin said to Tressa. Let everyone hear what he has to say. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater, humming with the nervous energy of 1,000 delegates from 1,000 worlds. Director Valerius stood at the central podium, a figure of sleek corporate authority. He was handsome, charismatic, his voice smooth and reassuring as he began to spin his tale. He spoke of GSC peacekeepers, of the Reala threat, of a rogue smuggler who had allied himself with a monster. He showed doctored sensor logs, edited comms recordings. It was a masterful performance. Kaylin watched from the Vance family's designated balcony, flanked by his family and Lyra. He's good, Ilara admitted, sounding impressed. He's almost believable. Almost, Kaylin agreed. When Valerius finished, a murmur of uncertainty rippled through the chamber. He had planted the seeds of doubt. Kaylin then exercised his right to speak. He walked to the podium, not with the swagger of a hero, but with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the truth. He didn't begin with a rebuttal. He didn't show them sensor logs or play recordings. My name is Kaylin Vance, he began, his voice clear and steady, carrying to every corner of the chamber. 15 years ago, I gave up that name because I grew tired of the games of power and influence that men like Director Valerius play. I chose a simple life. But a simple life does not mean an ignorant one. I know what the GSC has become under his leadership, an instrument of fear, a private army masquerading as peacekeepers. He then turned to Lyra, who stood on the balcony, a solitary beacon of her people. Director Valerius calls this woman a monster. He speaks of the danger in her DNA. He's right. She is dangerous. Her people held the key to creation, the ability to shape reality itself. A power so great they chose to hide it, to suppress it, for fear of how it could be misused. The GSC didn't hunt the Reala to protect the galaxy. They hunted them to steal that power for themselves. Lies, Valerius shouted from his seat.
Where is your proof?
My proof? Kalen said, turning his gaze back to the director. My proof is sitting on your private server. Encrypted file Project Chimera, the project to synthesize Reala DNA. The project that required samples, fresh ones. A collective gasp went through the chamber. Valerius's face went white. How could you possibly know that? Because while you were busy doctoring sensor logs, Kalen said, a cold smile touching his lips. My sister was busy doing a little light code breaking. Isn't that right, Ilara? On the main screen above the podium, Ilara's grinning face appeared. Hi, everyone, she chirped. Director Valerius, you really should invest in a better firewall. Yours was, and I quote, adorably pathetic. Oh, and I took the liberty of downloading everything. I'm sending it to all your data pads. Right, now. A flurry of activity swept through the chamber as delegates looked down at their screens. Shocked murmurs turned into cries of outrage. The evidence was irrefutable. Valerius's crimes, his genocide, his ambition, all laid bare for the galaxy to see. He was finished. Kalen had won. But as the council guard moved to arrest Valerius, the director did something no one expected. He laughed. A wild, unhinged sound. You think this is over? He snarled, a strange device in his hand. You think you've won? You Vances are always so arrogant. You never see the real threat. He activated the device. A wave of energy, dark and corrupting, pulsed from the podium. On the balcony, Lyra cried out and collapsed, her body convulsing. The light in her skin flickered and died, replaced by encroaching shadows. What did you do? Kalen roared, rushing to her side. That was a genetic scrambler keyed to her specific DNA signature, Valerius said, his eyes gleaming with madness. Project Chimera wasn't just about synthesis. It was about control. Her gift, her power, it's tearing her apart from the inside. She has maybe an hour to live, and the only person who knows the counter sequence is me. He held up a data chip. Arrest me and she dies. Let me walk, and I might feel generous. Kalen looked from the sneering face of Valerius to Lyra, who was writhing in agony, her beautiful skin now marbled with veins of black corruption. The entire galaxy was watching. He had a choice to make. Justice for 1 billion dead souls, or the life of the one person who had made him feel alive again. He looked at his grandfather, whose face was a grim mask of stone. He looked at his sister, whose usual playful demeanor was gone, replaced by cold, calculating fury. He had the galaxy's attention. He had the moral high ground, and it was all utterly worthless. He knelt beside Lyra, taking her hand. It was cold as the void. Tell me what to do, he whispered, his voice breaking. There is, she gasped, her breath catching. One way. The first protocol, but it requires a bond, a true one. It will destroy the scrambler, but it might destroy us both. The choice wasn't about justice anymore. It was about sacrifice, the first protocol. It was a legend even among the Reala, a merging of consciousness, a sharing of life force so profound it could rewrite genetic code, heal fatal wounds, and, in theory, neutralize a weapon like the one Valerius had used. It was also incredibly dangerous. If the bond was rejected, if the two minds were not in perfect harmony, it would result in psychic feedback that would instantly kill them both. There was no room for doubt, no space for hesitation. Kalen looked down at Lyra, her life fading before his eyes. He saw not the last of a powerful species, but the woman who had seen through his carefully constructed walls, who had called him back from the exile he had chosen for himself. He saw her defiance, her strength, her tired smile. The choice was never a choice at all. Do it, he said, his voice ringing with a certainty that silenced the entire chamber. He ignored the shouts of his grandfather, the frantic calculations of his sister. He placed his hands on her temples, closed his eyes, and opened his mind. What followed was not a thought or a feeling, but an explosion of sensory data. He felt her entire life, 1 billion moments of joy and sorrow, of a civilization now lost to dust and memory. He felt the agony of the genetic scrambler, a fire burning through her very essence. And beneath it all, he felt her consciousness, vast and ancient and powerful. She met him in that mental landscape, not as a victim, but as an equal. "Are you sure?" Her thoughts echoed in his. "This will bind us, forever. You will not be able to hide from yourself or from me ever again." "I stopped hiding the moment I met you," he sent back, his own consciousness reaching for hers. Not with dominance, but with acceptance. He showed her his own past, the gilded cage of his youth, the crushing weight of expectation, the solitary act of rebellion that led him to a lonely life among the stars. He showed her his fear, his regret, and the spark of hope she had ignited within him. "I see you, Kaylin Vance," she thought, her presence wrapping around his, "and I am not afraid." Together, they faced the corrupting fire of the Scrambler. They didn't fight it. They absorbed it. They took its chaotic energy and gave it purpose, weaving it into the very fabric of their new bond. A wave of pure golden light erupted from them, washing over the entire council chamber. It was warm, vibrant, and filled with a sense of profound peace. The dark energy afflicting Lyra dissolved, her skin regaining its luminous glow. The genetic scrambler in Valerius's hand overloaded and exploded, leaving him stunned and disarmed. Lyra's eyes fluttered open. They were no longer just supernovas of defiance. They were deeper, calmer, and when she looked at Kaylin, he felt as if she were looking into his very soul. They had survived. They were bonded, and they were more than they had been before. Director Valerius stared, his face a mask of disbelief. His ultimate weapon had been defeated. His plan was in ruins. He was truly finished. The council guard, no longer hesitant, surged forward and dragged him away, his rants about power and control fading into the distance. A new era for the galaxy had begun, born not from a political vote, but from an act of selfless love. 6 months later, Kaylin stood on the balcony of a new home, one built not on Earth, but on a terraformed moon that orbited a peaceful gas giant. The architecture was a fusion of stark Vance minimalism and elegant Riala curves. It was a home for two people, for two civilizations. He felt Lyra approach from behind, her arms sliding around his waist. "Staring into the void again?" she murmured, her chin resting on his shoulder. He could feel her thoughts intertwined with his own, a constant, comforting presence. "Just appreciating the view," he replied, turning to face her. "I was a man who piloted a ship called the Void Hopper. I thought that was all there was. Emptiness to be crossed for a price. And now I know the void isn't empty. It's just waiting to be filled." The bond had changed them. He was calmer, more centered. The old anger and cynicism washed away. He had accepted his family, not as a burden, but as a part of who he was. He worked with the new Provisional Council, his tactical mind and deep-seated sense of justice proving invaluable in rebuilding what the GSC had broken. Lyra, no longer the last of her kind, but the first of a new generation, was a powerful voice for the lost and forgotten species of the galaxy. Their bond allowed her to channel her people's vast knowledge, not as a weapon, but as a tool for creation and understanding. The door to the balcony slid open. Ilara bounced in, followed by the Admiral. "Are you two being disgustingly serene again?" Ilara demanded. "Because there's a delegation of squid people here who want to challenge Grandpa to a game of mental chess for control of a trade route, and he says he can't cheat if you're both projecting all this. Honorable tranquility. It's very distracting." "I do not cheat," the Admiral growled. "I merely exploit my opponent's unstated weaknesses. See?" Ilara said to Lyra. "He cheats." Kaylin laughed, a real, unburdened sound. His life wasn't simple. It was complicated, messy, and filled with squid people and galactic politics. But it was his. He had chosen it. He looked at Lyra, at the galaxy reflected in her eyes, and knew he was finally home. So, what do you think? We all have a version of ourselves we keep hidden away, a secret identity buried under the routine of our daily lives. Kaylin ran from his for 15 years. But what happens when the universe forces your hand? Do you cling to the comfortable mask, or do you embrace the chaos and become who you were always meant to be? Let me know in the comments below what you would do if you were in Kaylin's shoes. Would you have turned Lyra over, or would you have played the gambit? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more tales from the chaotic, unpredictable, and ultimately hopeful expanse of space. Until next time, keep your engines warm and your secrets safe. Or don't. It's usually more fun that way.